Now, welcome to another of my Sunday commentary videos, where we'll once again be straying away just a bit from the galaxy far, far away, and instead talking about our own stranger real world, though as usual, it'll still be about or involve Star Wars to some degree. It'll also be a bit more candid than my normal videos, and there will probably be plenty of rambling, so do forgive me in advance for that. But if you've seen any of my other videos, you know how I get sometimes. Anyway, what I'm mainly going to talk about here, albeit a little indirectly perhaps, are two things that recently happened on Twitter or are happening right now in regards to one of them. The first one of which is when Peyton Reed, the director of Episode 8 of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, that would be the episode with Luke Skywalker in it, he tweeted at Mark Hamill and basically told him thank you and that it was a dream come true to work with him, and also included a picture of Luke from A New Hope that used to hang on his wall when he was a kid. And no surprise, Mark Hamill then responded by basically saying, "You're welcome," and that it was great to revisit his character when he was still a symbol of hope and optimism, which, of course, many took as a jab at or a slight against The Last Jedi, and how the character was portrayed in that film, with plenty of people just straight up being pretty nasty towards Mark Hamill, because I guess he's not allowed to have an opinion, and then to express it about a character he's personally played, a character that probably means a whole heck of a lot more to him than we could really understand. Next up then, and more recently, the official Star Wars Twitter account tweeted that our Star Wars community is one of hope and inclusivity. We do not stand for bullying and racism. We support at Christina Ariel. And if you're wondering who that is and what that was all about, you're not alone, because that's how a lot of people responded to the tweet. And to give you the very abridged version of things, she was recently named the host of a new Star Wars High Republic show. But there were those who weren't happy with that because if you dig into her Twitter history, at times she has made some interesting things or remarks about white people. And if you care to know more about that, by all means, check into it for yourself. It's not hard to find. But it's not her tweets or her directly that I'm really here to talk about. Because you see, there were a lot of other replies to this tweet that the official Star Wars account had made, with some just straight up supporting it or applauding Star Wars for taking a stance or whatever else, while others called them out for not sticking up more for actors like John Boyega or Kelly Marie Tran when they were harassed, or people were bringing up that they shrunk Finn's image on the Chinese poster for The Force Awakens. And then many of the very same people who were upset about the way those two actors were treated and that Lucasfilm or Disney didn't come to their defense, and they were appalled and upset about the whole thing in general, while they were simultaneously calling for the firing of Gina Carano, who plays Cara Dune in The Mandalorian, or just saying cruel or disparaging things about her in general. And look, if you don't like her or disagree with what she's said in the past, that's one thing, that's your prerogative. But I think they were completely oblivious to the irony here, that they were calling for Lucasfilm and or Disney to fire Gina Carano and saying just horrible things about her, all the while calling out Lucasfilm and Disney for not protecting John Boyega and Kelly Marie Tran from fans who had said horrible things about them. They were literally demanding the company to condemn hate directed at certain people while asking them to condone it when it was directed at someone else. Because I guess that's how we fight hate, with more hate? But then again, it's only actually hate when someone else is doing it or saying it, right? Not when it's you doing it because your beliefs are automatically the correct ones, right? It's them who must be wrong and listening to bad information. Not to mention here, I mean, it makes perfect sense to hate someone you perceive to be full of hate, not a trace of flawed logic there. Nor could your hatred and constant condemnation of them every time you get the chance in any way ever possibly be responsible for some of their hate directed at you. Them having the gall to defend themselves and their beliefs from constant attacks is only proof of how wrong and stupid they are, right? And before I even address what I know the counter-arguments to what I just said are, I'm going to switch gears a bit, or seem to. This will be relevant to the topic, I promise. And I'm going to answer a question I often get, which is, why is my Twitter handle @TellConjaClub if I don't like the sequels? And again, I know this seems way off topic, but just go with it for a minute. And to answer that question, well, I created the account shortly after The Force Awakens came out, and my intent or original idea for everything I was going to do was to talk some Star Wars, which is still my intent. Nothing's really changed on that front, other than I guess you could say the scope of things is much larger than I ever expected. And sometimes I make videos like this one, which I never imagined I would. I never imagined that Star Wars or the fandom would sort of become a microcosm of the real world. Anyway, for whatever reason back then, a few months after The Force Awakens came out, when I was just so excited to have Star Wars back, or back in movie form, and I wanted to start something where I'd maybe get a couple hundred subscribers that I could talk back and forth with about Star Wars, just a few people, I thought it was clever to take that line from The Force Awakens, the tell that to Conjure Club line, and to run with it and have fun with it. Where if people had something about Star Wars they wanted to say or talk about, they could tell me, they could tell it to Conjure Club, and we could discuss it. And I mean, actually discuss it, even if we disagreed about something. In fact, and I know I've said this before, but it is the truth, I've learned far more about Star Wars from doing this here on YouTube and talking with other people, with other fans, again, even those I disagree with, than I ever did from watching the movies 100 times, or reading all the books and comics, playing all the games, or analyzing the words of George Lucas like it was some sort of gospel. Because the people in the comments, or wherever else I've spoken with them, be it Discord, via emails, or even in person, have pointed out things to me that I just had never noticed or even thought about before. They've allowed me to see it in a whole different way because they maybe explained what it personally meant to them, or how they felt when they saw it or experienced it for the first time. And as you probably know, most Star Wars fans have a story around the first time they saw it. I know I do. I was 5 years old and I saw Return of the Jedi in the theater, and quite literally, that experience would change the course of my life, because here I am almost 38 years later, talking Star Wars for a living. I'm sure my 5-year-old self would love to know that someday people would actually want to listen to him ramble about Star Wars, because back then no one did, and I just ended up drawing in comic book style my own little sort of Star Wars stories, but let's not go into that. And so all in all here, listening to others in regards to Star Wars, and truly listening to them, and not just doing the online equivalent of nodding my head from time to time and saying, and even listening to those that I didn't necessarily agree with, has broadened my understanding of Star Wars in a way that me just quietly pondering it for decades or drawing my stories as a kid never ever could. It's allowed me to get not only a much greater, richer view of Star Wars, but of the world itself, or maybe I should say, of the true diversity of the people who make it up, and I mean diversity of thought. And so if I were asked if there's any sort of important life lesson that I've maybe kind of learned from doing this on YouTube and from the, I don't know, maybe 100,000 or so comments I've read in that time, and the thousands upon thousands of people I've responded to and talked with, it'd be that if you don't think you have a lot to learn from other people, even from people who have very different views, beliefs, and opinions than you, or that disagree with you, then you're probably not going to learn a lot in this life in general. You're not going to learn much if you plug your ears and just shout back angrily at someone every time they say something you don't like, or when they disagree with you. Or worse yet, when you so quickly label them for having opinions or beliefs that you're not even willing to try and listen to or understand. Because it's amazing how much peace just hearing someone out can bring. I worked in the restaurant industry for years, mostly as a chef, but I've waited tables, I've done it all. And in that time, I've had to deal with some completely irate and irrational customers for one reason or another. And I learned the quickest way to de-escalate a situation when someone looks like they're about ready to stab you in the eye with a fork is to just listen to them, and to not just say you understand why they're upset, but to truly try and see it from their side and to figure out why they're upset. But today, when people disagree about, well, pretty much anything, it seems like no one ever just says that, you know what, I disagree with you, and I'll tell you why, and I'll even do it in a respectful manner because I know you're entitled to your own opinion too. Instead, they just snap back at you and flat out tell you, hey, you're wrong, and here's why you're a terrible person for thinking that way. Even though I didn't actually listen to anything you just said, I'm just assuming and willing to label you, which totally doesn't say anything about me and how tolerant I am. And speaking of tolerance, that word has taken on a whole new and false meaning lately. Because to tolerate something used to mean allowing the existence, occurrence, or practice of something that one does not necessarily like or agree with without interference. In other words, putting up with something that bugs you, or that you don't like, or that you even hate. And you can only really tolerate things when you don't like or agree with them. You're not actually tolerant of something when you support or approve of it, especially when you get mad at other people for not approving of it. You can't call yourself a tolerant person when the only things you actually tolerate are your own short list of beliefs or things you already approve of. And if you think you're a tolerant person, I have a very quick and easy little test for you. Do you get upset and feel the need to act or say something every time you hear someone else say something that you don't like or agree with? Because if the answer is yes, you might be intolerant. And look here, I know what the response to that is going to be, or the argument or defense against all of this that I've been talking about. which is, but there are some really terrible people out there with horrible views and beliefs that mean real harm to others. And these are views we shouldn't be tolerant of. And yes, you're absolutely right. There are some really bad people out there in this world. No one is denying that. No one is saying the world is a perfect place. But you're going to have a really hard time finding those people or sorting out the truly terrible people in this world who really do want to do bad things or hurt people if you just try to blanket silence everyone and anyone who says anything you don't like or offers any kind of pushback to your views or in any way dares question them. I mean, just because you don't allow someone to speak their mind doesn't mean you've changed their mind. To take a quote from Game of Thrones, when you tear out a man's tongue, you're not proving him a liar. You're only telling the world you fear what he might say. And the only thing you're likely going to do when you silence someone is not make them fall in line and suddenly agree with you, but to make them angry and want to do something so that they will be heard. Again, going back to my restaurant example, most of the time people just want to be heard and have their grievances taken seriously. And believe it or not, once you've listened, most people are willing to listen back in return and to compromise with you. But that rarely, if ever, happens when your opening stance towards someone is that they're wrong and a horrible person that should be shunned and condemned. Go figure. Even though, again, you didn't even listen to what they said, what their issues are, or you don't even care what they're all about. And as I step back and look at the world today, and mainly the country I live in, the United States, that's the problem I see. Two sides yelling at each other, saying my voice will be heard and you don't understand or care about my troubles. You don't know what it's like to be me, so I'm not going to listen to you. And why should I listen to you? Because your views and beliefs are radical and you want to destroy the country. And I mean, you do realize that the other side thinks pretty much the exact same thing about you. They think you're the radicals trying to destroy the country. And look, I know there are radicals on both sides. Certainly there is. Certainly there are some on both sides or at the far ends, at the extremes, with some pretty messed up views. But not everybody on each side is at those extremes. In fact, most aren't. Not everyone on the right is a white supremacist, and not everyone on the left thinks a hammer and sickle should replace the stars and stripes. And if you actually stopped and just listened, you might find out that the vast majority of people on the right actually hate white supremacists just as much as you do on the left, and that the vast majority of the people on the left hate communism just as much as you do on the right. I know, it's crazy, but most people actually do believe we all, no matter what race, creed, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or whatever else it might be, that you deserve a shot at a good life, and that the world could be a better place for all of us, and maybe it could be if we, tried working together. But if that's ever going to happen, you have to listen, and to really listen, and to even try to care about people who think differently or see things differently than you, or at least tolerate them. Actual tolerance. But it all starts with willing to listen to the other side. And if your only response to everything I've just said here is that they need to listen first, well then maybe all hope really is lost. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Make what you will of this video and everything I've said, but if it helps even one person to stop and think about what's going on in the world right now, then at least that's something. Either way, leave a comment below, and let's do more than just talk. Let's listen to each other. And until next time, thanks for watching.